Regular meeting of the Sewer Authority Midcoastside for Monday, May 9th, 2022. Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Nye.
Here.
Director Lohman.
Here.
Director Clark.
Present.
Director Penrose.
Present.
Director Slater Carter. Not in yet. Chair Ruddock.
I just want to mention that due to the continuing state of emergency declared by the governor related to preventing the spread of COVID-19 and pursuant to Government Code Section 54953, subsection E, Sewer Authority Midcoastside will be holding this board meeting by Zoom webinar. If you are participating by phone and wish to comment, you will raise your hand, *9, and you can unmute yourself with *6. So we do have a quorum. So I will open it up for public comment. And I see that Greg Villegas has his hand raised. Greg?
Thank you, Chair. I had a productive meeting last week with John Doty of Half Moon Bay regarding the issue of wet weather storage. You may recall, well, last December 13th, we had flows that exceeded 15 million gallons per day peak flow rate. And we could only explain 3.2 of that based on measurements from Portola on some data I saw. So that left over 11, almost 12 million gallons a day flow rate. What John and I have done is traded a bunch of emails. I met with him. He had his engineer prepare a report based on modeling the Half Moon Bay sewer system. And that report basically says they couldn't have contributed more than 7.7 million gallons a day peak flow rate. So that leaves us with unexplained 3.3 million gallons a day flow rate. And so we discussed some of the potential issues. Independently, I also had somebody look at the size of the IPS and again do a theoretical calculation that says it can't transmit more than 4. So depending on what you want to take for evidence, we're over 15. We can't explain more than 4 from the IPS. That leaves 11, and we have 7.7 in the Half Moon Bay model. So the one theory is that there could be I&I in pipes from the south, which are after where the model stops. There's also the possibility that there's some issue with the model assumptions. I'm not prepared to rule on that. It would take a peer review of the model and the modeling process and the assumptions. And it is also a possibility that there's I&I from the IPS where it is not metered. So I see a few actions as possible. One, install more meters. And John said Half Moon Bay is in process of getting some meters, might be a couple of months or more. That would certainly help. Another thing is to get a peer review of the model and then refine it. And then another idea is to get another party involved to audit the system. As you know, that electrical building is vulnerable. Following all that, hopefully we'll be able to size the wet weather storage we need appropriately and indicate where it could be installed. Given the configuration of the pipes from Half Moon Bay, it might be more than one location. And of course, we'd have to agree to ownership and funding for the wet weather storage that's proposed. So I would just like to say to the board, this issue should not be forgotten. I'll write up what I just said and send it to the board, and I'd appreciate your consideration of continued research on this matter going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg. I just want to remind everybody, if you're not speaking, to mute yourselves. I see 2 directors right now have been unmuted now for a while. So if you're not speaking, please mute yourself. That would be helpful. And if you raise your hand and speak, remember to lower your hand. That also would be helpful. Okay, do we have any other public members who wish to speak? I don't see any hands raised. So I will move on to the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they'd like to pull, or does anyone like to make a motion in a second to approve?
I move that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll
Second.
second.
You check.
That was a second by Rick. Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter, I think she hasn't come in yet. Chair Radek,
Yes.
I have a small point to make.
Yes, please do.
Yes, I'd like to mention that although the funding for the San Mateo County Resource Conservation District's First Flush program is from SAM, I'd like to stress the fact that this program is supported by Half Moon Bay, Granada Community Sanitary District, as well as Montera Water and Sanitary District. All three of them contribute to SAM, but they individually also support this program. Thank you.
You're muted, Debbie.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. Item 4 is regular business, and item 4A is receive and review the financial report for Q3 fiscal year 21-22, budget versus actual.
Chair, before we go there, Noah Katz from RCD had raised his hand for the previous agenda item.
Oh, okay. Noah, would you like to comment?
Sure, thank you. I just wanted to just add a clarifying note to what Kishan just mentioned. So in the past, PCSD and City of Half Moon Bay have contributed separately, but over at least the last 3 years, it was just SAM contributing and the San Mateo County Harbor District.
Well, that's good information. Thank you. We will take that to our agency.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Noah. Item 4A, Kishan?
Yes, this is regarding the third quarter financial report for the fiscal year 21-22 budget versus actual. This report was discussed earlier in the finance committee a couple of weeks back and was recommended to take it to the board. So we've brought it now to the board, and my finance officer, George Evans, is going to make a short presentation. We also have staff from Mace Consulting who helped us put together the report available for any questions along with staff members. So I'll just enable so that George can share his screen and start the presentation. Over to you, George.
Thank you, Kishan. And thank you, Brandon, for putting this together. It's pretty much the same format you've seen in the past. Let's see. Does everybody see that?
George, could you get rid of the thumbnails on the left?
Yeah, we seem to have an ongoing issue with this because on my screen, I'm not seeing that.
Okay. I mean, it's still at least the title page is readable. So.
Okay, then as I go through, if I think we've worked it out before, Kishan, when you were operating it from your side, when we were in the finance committee. Okay, I'll go ahead.
We can live with it.
Okay, thanks. All right, as far as, and this is to provide an overview of the agency's revenue and expenses for the third quarter compared to the budget. And again, this is our one of our goals, to be consistently monitoring the revenue and expenses to make sure we're on track with the annual goals. We're 3/4 of the way through the year now. And for revenue and expenses to the two budgets, we have a general fund and collection fund. This is just the overall numbers. For revenue, we're right at 3/4, and for expenses, we're a little bit under the budget. As we'll see later on in other slides, that varies widely from sector of the budget to sector. As far as the collection, these numbers are thrown out a little bit, and again, we'll go into the detail next. As far as the general budget, the big items to look at are operating and maintenance assessment. Those are the big portions, and the capital contributions.
George,
Excuse me,
all
George.
we're seeing is your cover sheet.
Yes,
the
George. we are
quarterly
not able to
budget
see any other
review.
slides.
Okay.
Can you go to slideshow?
Yeah, that's what I was on my
Okay.
side. That's why I think maybe
Okay,
you'll have
now
to
we can-
share.
We can see your fourth slide. We didn't see the second and third slide.
Yeah, not sure why.
Now we can see your second slide.
Okay. Apologies. Here's the slide that went along with my mentioning the general fund and the collection fund as far as revenue and expenditures. This is the total. So as I was saying in the general, as far as revenue, we're right at 3/4, which is to be expected. The expenditures are a little under, and again, for the collection, we're a little bit over. We'll see the reasons why later. Here's in the general fund, a review of the summary. Again, the big ticket items are the operating and maintenance assessments, where we're right at 75%, and the capital contributions, we're right at 75%. The other two sections are other income and interest and dividend income. They're much smaller parts of the budget. So when it comes to the overall budget, we're right at 74%. Here, we're looking at the expenses, and all the detail is in the report, but we've picked out 4 of the big individual accounts that are widely different from the budget. The big 4 are miscellaneous professional services, engineering and the equipment maintenance, and chemicals. And on all of them, we're over, and in total, we're 26% over. Here we're providing a little more detail on each of those 4 big ticket items. For miscellaneous professional services, a big portion went to the treatment process review study, which was close to 95,000. For engineering, we've spent approximately 140,000. For equipment maintenance, we're over our budget by 95,000, of which 386,000 has been spent on service calls. These next items, all that end in -6015, 6121, 60146, 6016, these are all expenditures that currently, as we have done in the past, they're shown as expenses, but at the end of the year, these get capitalized because what they are is either improvement to existing assets or they're the purchase of assets. As far as our environmental compliance expenses, again, we're running a little high on these, and here are some of the big items. Again, professional services, engineering, equipment maintenance, and chemicals. And in raw numbers, we're over by 125,000 almost. The big ticket items here are the professional services. We did some additional testing with BioStar and Alpha Labs. As far as our administration expenses, variance is a total of 127,000. The big portions of that are involved in legal fees, again, professional services, and some computer network maintenance. And in detail, again. We're looking at 40,000 in legal fees. That's over. There's almost 17,000 on professional services, and the computer network's over by 25.
George, could you go back to the admin slide, please? Could you give more detail about the reasons for, the underlying reasons for each of those items? You mentioned that they're over in the previous slide, but why are they over?
We can look into that and get back to you. I actually, when we were putting this together, I've got those isolated. They're not included in the summary here.
I mean, we should know, what the source of the issue is.
Yeah, it's in the detail. I should have included them here as far as those big ticket items. I'm just looking for my work files now.
You can come back to it. You can move forward on the presentation, but
Okay.
when we're looking at the analysis, rather than just itemizing the breakout, it would be helpful to have an explanation.
Sure. And we actually, did that in previous slides. On this one, this is more of a summary, what was above. And again, when we prepared this, I overlooked this particular slide as far as adding in that detail. So if we go to infrastructure, we're actually well under. Miscellaneous professional services, we're under by almost 1.3 compared to the budget. And for the Portola pump station, 147. Again, this detail is included in the report. But basically with the infrastructure, as we've discussed in the finance committee, we haven't spent as much money as we've collected.
George, can you explain why miscellaneous professional services is considered infrastructure?
Yeah, because some of the stuff that qualifies for like setting up of assets and setting up equipment, it's done third party. So it falls at least in some of the categories, whether it's engineering services or setting up assets, would fall into these categories.
Thank you.
I think the terminology that I've heard is some of the softer costs as opposed to, the hard costs of the actual hardware. This would be like the programming, the setting up, the labor involved in setting up stuff.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Judge. If I may intervene, the infrastructure is normally consists of construction expenses as well as soft costs like design, project management, permit fees, and other things. All these go under miscellaneous professionals, while the other part of it is construction.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kishan. Feel free to jump in anytime.
Okay, so if you are, the way to consider this is for any project, there are the soft costs and the hard costs. And if that project is infrastructure, they get put together in the infrastructure bucket.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. You can capture the total project costs from the infrastructure budget. That's the estimated project cost, soft as well as hard costs.
Director Dye has a question.
Go ahead.
You're muted, Director Dye.
Sorry. Before we move on to collections, can we move back? Can we look at the overall slide of the 4 areas? with related to operations? I think the first slide.
Is that the one you were?
Not that one. The one that shows for each area expenses and.
I think that's the next slide, maybe.
Next slide. No.
No. Do we not have a slide that shows each of the 4 areas and how we're doing in them?
I think they're separate slides.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much are we over budget in the areas other than infrastructure? Total.
That should be on the detailed report itself.
Yeah, I have that information here from the packet. The treatment, we are over by 26%.
No, I wanted to just know the total for the 3 areas other than infrastructure.
Yeah, individually.
No, I want to know them all together. How much are we over budget this year so far on everything except infrastructure?
So I think what Barbara's asking is if we just, instead of listing all 4, we only list 3.
I understand.
Yeah.
I have only the total value. I don't have the percentage though.
I think
I don't want to know the percentage. I want to know the total value.
Yeah.
Oh, you want the total value? Okay. The total value is roughly around 927,000, close to $1 million.
And how much are we under budget on infrastructure
We are under budget.
by the amount?
Million.
Year to budget. 1.6 million.
Okay, so even though when you look at the overall financial position at this point, it shows us as positive, we are actually over budget by almost $1 million. I just wanted to just note that, and something that I think we as a board need to watch, the fact that we're over budget and understand the reasons why we are over budget by nearly $1 million.
I think we'll be discussing that a little further along too.
Yep, that's just my point. I just wanted to make it clear that understand the numbers, exactly what they are, because I'm not sure that we're seeing them presented quite in that way. But thank you.
I'm confused, Barbara. If we are under budget by more than we are by over budget, how is it we are under budget? You're only talking about 3/4 of the items and not the entire budget. But you're saying you're making the statement as if the entire budget is underwater by $900 and some thousand. So I'm confused.
We budgeted $2.5 million, or I'm not sure offhand what the number is on top of my head, for infrastructure.
Correct.
And that money is subsidizing the other 3 areas right now, and making it look as if we are doing okay, when actually the reason we are over budget in kind of all the operations areas, and we are under budget in the infrastructure area. And I just think it's important to note that. I'm not overemphasizing. It's just, I think it is important for us to realize that the operations of the plant is over by almost $1 million as we're 3/4 of the way through the year.
Well, but we still have money coming in.
From money that we allocated for infrastructure repair.
I believe, don't we pay 1/12 of our expenses per member agencies a month?
Yes.
Yes, we're paying, every agency is making monthly payments.
Exactly. So I'd prefer to see how this could work out in the long run, rather than taking this point in time and making the strong statement that we are overspent by between $950 and $1 million, when there are other operational things and infrastructure things and other income coming in. I think it's more complex
Well, the infrastructure income is subsidizing the operations issues, but I mean, that's a valid thing. I just want it to be recognized.
Yeah, and that's why
I think it should be
I point out.
recognized. It should be recognized for the public, and it would be more transparent to the public to do what, you know, other government agencies do and separate capital budgets, infrastructure budgets from operations. You know, typically you do not commingle in your budget your infrastructure and your O&M. Those are considered two separate things. So it would be more the budget situation would be more transparent if we actually separated out capital from operations. And because we don't, it's a little harder to tease out, and it raises more questions in some quarters. So that's all I have to say about that.
And on a monthly.
Time with the presentation, please.
Okay. And certainly in terms of just an overview, when we meet with the finance committee, we can certainly revamp the way this presentation is made and appears and what's included. You know, we certainly don't have an issue with that. And the other item in relation to what Barbara's mentioning about the specific amount that we're over, almost $500,000 of what we're currently expensing up to this point will be transferred at year end over to capital. That those are expenditures we've made that are currently appearing in our general, in the general fund as operations, you know, repairs to the plant, et cetera, that will definitely be converted to assets, at which time they then go from this section of the budget into infrastructure. So,
However, if I can speak to that, those are not items that were authorized as part of the infrastructure budget approved by the agencies, correct? While this may be a very valid point, when we authorized a certain amount of spending on infrastructure, those items were not included in that authorization, even though you're going to shift them into that and use the money that we authorized for other things to pay for those things. Correct?
correct.
Are you not right about that?
Yeah, and all the, you know, purchases that have been made have been authorized, if not by specific PO. You know, the big ticket items have been brought to the board to be authorized.
But nobody said that we have to buy these things now and we're going to use the money that you authorized for other things to buy this instead. I don't remember ever hearing that. I'm trying to understand this process of how we approve things. And isn't that right? That while it is true that these things will be capitalized, and I guess you're going to use infrastructure money for it, they were not in the infrastructure budget that we approved. And that means that things that were approved are not going to get done.
No.
Right?
Well, if you look at it in terms of, okay, let's just use theoretical numbers. If we had been, you know, if the situation allowed for all of our infrastructure items to have been to progress as we would have liked them to, and if they would have all been, you know, right on schedule, then yes, we would have had to, you know, probably much earlier in the year, because we have been over budget in earlier quarters, and said, okay, our, you know, operations are running high, but, you know, because the funds existed, we haven't had to apply for a, you know, mid-year adjustment. So.
Because you're using the infrastructure money to cover those things. I understand that. Thanks.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to stress the fact that when the infrastructure budget was prepared and approved, these items were not known that they're going to come up. So that'll come up as an emergency, or as the year passes by, these things come up. Whatever capital, whatever infrastructure has been spent for doing these capital items. And these would be either would have been brought to the board for approval or would have been under the general manager's approval authority to carry out these projects. So, and that doesn't mean that infrastructure projects which are not completed in a particular year will not be done. It will be done, but it'll probably be pushed to the next year's, or some improvements would have been done. You'll come to know of it in the later part in the agenda where I have covered it. So just stick on, and then we'll let you know more about it.
Okay. I have a question for Barbara. Would you prefer that each of the member agencies get billed on a monthly basis for the expenditures from the past and the future month, and instead of having an annual budget, so that we have to go through and approve each one of these things individually as they come up, even though some of them were emergency items like this bus duct?
Of course not.
Well, I just don't understand.
I just want us to recognize that we're $1 million over budget in everything except infrastructure. That's all I'm saying, is we need to be aware of that if we're going to do our job. That's what I'm saying.
And we are aware of that.
Great. That's all I'm saying. And I feel like it's being belabored. And what I'm after is just an understanding of where we are. Thank you.
I think we can move on.
Yes, good.
So that takes care of the general budget update. And now we're at the collection fund. So on the revenue side, again, ideally, if there were no pass-throughs or anything else, then we'd be at 75%, because as you know, the collections is billed on a, 1/12 every month. So as we'll see, most of this is because of pass-throughs. And of course, Montero, because of all the lift stations and that, has the greatest number. Here's the amount of pass-throughs for each of the three agencies. As far as the collection fund expenses, again, there you see the total of the pass-through. Of course, that's not part of the budget because there's no way to guess how much there will be in pass-throughs. The other areas we have are administrative expenses, utilities, and equipment and supplies. Also, another area is the mechanically related supplies, where a little bit over on some hardware stuff that had to be purchased. Total expense of $209,000 on equipment and supplies. Major variance is account 5821, and we budgeted for the truck has been purchased, and so far we're accounting for the budget only accounts for 75%. So as the year concludes, we'll be closer to our budget expectations. And that we covered in much more detail at the Finance Committee. And as I said, we have our, the reports are available.
Keishan? You're muted.
You're muted, Kishan.
I'm sorry, I didn't have anything particular. I forgot to lower my hand.
Catherine, did you have another question or comment?
No, I thought I had lowered my hand on the bottom of the screen, and then when it went back to this view, it was still up. I don't know.
Okay.
And computers today are having our issues.
Still accommodating to Zoom. Okay, is everybody okay to move on to item B? I don't see any other hands raised.
Actually, we need the board to receive and file the financial report. So maybe if you could have a vote, that would be good.
Motion and a second.
Move per staff.
I'll second.
Could I have a roll call, please?
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock.
Yes.
And can I add my thanks for the hard work that went into this presentation and giving us a really good look at where we are financially.
Yeah, and I'd like to thank, Director Dye as chair of the Finance Committee and as a director for, calling attention to important information. So thank you, Director Dye. Item B, adopt resolution number 2-2022, adopting the Sewer Authority Midcoastside general budget for fiscal year 2022-23 and adopting the position control list.
Yeah, this is regarding the general budget for fiscal year 2022-2023. Last month in the month of March, 2 months back, we had made a presentation of the general budget to the SAM board as well as to the public, and thereafter it was taken to the member agencies, district or council as the case may be. And these have been approved at the respective districts and the city and been brought back to SAM for adopting. So I'm not going into much detail of it, but if somebody needs, I can always pull up my slides and then clarify. So any questions, staff is here to answer them.
I move that we accept the budget for
Second.
staff.
Second.
And Half Moon Bay will be approving the budget under protest.
Oh, that's interesting.
We
So
approved it
you're-
under protest at the City of Half Moon Bay council meeting. This is what we've done, in past years as well.
Oh, for the last 5 years under the lawsuit. Yeah,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay.
Can you specify which items you're approving under protest?
Well, our motion, at city council meeting that was approved was just adopting the budget under protest. Of course, the issue under disagreement is, costs related to the IPS. So that's what we would be protesting, but we don't need a separate motion about that. We can say we approve the budget and just mention that each of us, we individually are approving under protest. So the motion can be approve the budget. And then as we say aye, we say approve under, Half Moon Bay approves under protest.
But the other agencies don't know which expenditures you're protesting? We're approving a budget that you're protesting specific expenditures?
The IPS.
But
Barbara,
which are those?
Barbara, I agree with you on this. I think it needs to be specific.
Well, I can't do that tonight. We're not approving the entire budget under protest, but we're, because it would be onerous to break out all those things. And it might be things that are in this year's budget, might be in the capital, it might be operations, but it's related to the IPS.
Well,
So in the
but-
past year, we just approved the budget as a budget item, the motion, and just said, as we vote individually,
Well, given some of the actions by the city of Half Moon Bay in the past, I think I can't vote for this until I know specifically not only what you're protesting now, but what you have protested in the past so that we know as member agencies what our potential bills are in this lawsuit, in addition to the attorney's costs and all. But we need to know exactly what it is you've been protesting all these past 5 years.
only expenses associated with the intertie pipe system.
Was that in your motion at the city council?
No, it was just a general motion approving the budget under protest. Yeah.
In that case, that's what the motion is, and that's what your action was, and that's binding on the entire budget without qualification. Am I correct, Jeremy?
You know, if the answer to how do you vote is yes, the fact that they say, I'm not happy about it, or under protest, or I think this stinks, or whatever it is, the answer is still yes. And so if they say no, that's the answer. So if the answer is yes, but we're protesting.
The answer to what is yes? What are you saying the answer to is yes?
Well, if they're voting yes on the motion to approve the budget,
Yes,
then
we're
the
voting
budget
yes.
says that that's a vote in favor of approval of the budget, no matter what other kinds of observations or characterizations they may put on it.
And if you want to take a 5-minute break, I can go back to the city council meeting and pull up the motion.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I could clarify before we go for a break, if you wish.
Sure.
Okay. So we have the infrastructure budget, which is a part of the general budget. So we have the infrastructure projects, and I can name those projects. And if you want dollar values, I can also give you the dollar values, which will probably make it very clear. The Montara Pump Station replace Pump 1. That is the IPS related projects. So that would be the project which Half Moon Bay is approving under protest. Montara Pump Station install grit removal. That's again one of the projects. Montara Pump Station install hatches. So there are a couple of them like that. So if you wish, we can name each of them which are related to IPS and make it clear. Okay.
You're muted. You're muted, Debbie. Debbie, you're muted. Debbie.
We did vote to approve the budget, and we will tonight vote to approve the budget. But because of the litigation, we're saying, and we can spell it out that under protest for those items related to the intertie pipe system. But we're still paying our bills.
I'm agreeing with Jeremy on this.
Yeah, and one
The protests are irrelevant.
Yeah.
They voted yes. Let's move on.
Yeah, and I have one cautionary thing to just let everybody remind folks, because I don't know if people realize it, and that is voting no triggers certain things that you may not want to trigger. And so there's section on page 14 of the JPA agreement. If a general budget fails to attain the approval required, the directors of consenting member agencies may treat the refusal of a dissenting member agency to approve the budget as a request for withdrawal from the authority. So anyway, just be careful. I don't want anybody to inadvertently do that.
No, I will probably vote yes, but I'm trying to get on the record for the conclusion of the lawsuit, unless we end up all the way to the state Supreme Court, but we may. And that would be exactly what these protests are going to amount to. We have an obligation to the public that they need to know what's going on too. Not only the Half Moon Bay public, but the Montara public, who may or may not have to pay these bills.
I am trying to find our budget motion now.
Do you mean the budget motion that's already in our packet?
No, I'm talking about the city council motion to approve the budget at our last meeting.
Because there's a section in that's in our packet already about the protested part, and it cites the previous 5 approved budgets.
Correct. That's the part of the resolution, Half Moon Bay City of Half Moon Bay's resolution. A copy of that is in the staff report as an attachment.
Yeah, so the staff recommendation that was approved Adopt a resolution approving under protest the fiscal year 2022-23 Sewer Authority Midcoastside Operations and Maintenance Budget, expressly noting the city protest of any and all costs associated with the repair and replacement of the intertie pipeline system, consistent with the terms set forth in the September 13th, 2017 stipulation and order.
Okay, that's clear, and I'm glad that's going to be in the minutes.
So I
We need
think,
to
you know,
vote.
all we need is a motion to approve. And then, you know, as we say aye, we will say, you know, under those items associated with the intertie pipeline system under protest. But we're approving the budget.
I think we made the motion.
Has the motion been made already? I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
Yes, okay. Is there a second?
we had one.
Who was it?
Kitchen, who is our motion and second? Do you have it?
No.
Let's just start over.
Yep.
I move we approve the budget as presented.
I'll second.
Second,
Rick can have the second.
Second by Loman. Can I have a roll call, please?
Director Dye,
Yes.
Director Loman,
yes.
Director Clark,
Aye, without protest.
Director Penrose,
I, with protest, for all items associated with the intertie pipeline system.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Raddock,
Yes. With the exception of those items associated with the intertie pipeline system, which we approve under protest. So motion carries unanimously.
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Moving on to item C, which is adopting the Sewer Authority Midcoastside Contract Collection Services Budget for fiscal year 2022-2023.
Yep. So the contract collection services budget for fiscal year 22-23 was presented to the board and the public in the month of March. It was brought to the attention of the member agencies, and the member agencies, they took it to the respective board and the councils and adopted it. It's brought back to the SAM board for adoption. Just to give you an overall picture, there is a decrease in the budget by about 14%. That's primarily because last year there was an increase. There was the expenses included the purchase of a new Vector truck, and therefore that is not required right now, and therefore there's a decrease. Staff is here to answer any questions on the collections budget.
Move approval of the collections budget as presented, and my compliments to the collection staff for the good job they do.
Seconded.
And I'll second.
I just want to note that I see no hands raised by members of the public. So we could have a roll call.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark. You're muted.
Aye,
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Raddock,
Yes.
motion passed.
Okay. So item D, authorize general manager to issue a purchase order to Duperon for the purchase of mechanical bar screen and washer compactor in the amount of $538,000.
Yep. Thank you very much, Chair. This is the request to obtain authorization for the purchase of mechanical bar screen and washer compactor. If you've been to the plant, you will notice that this is the first item in the headworks where the sewer enters the plant, and that is the bar screen. So the headwork receives the influent wastewater from all from outside the plant and gets into the bar screen. So the bar screen removes debris such as rags, trash, and all that which is compacted for disposal. So the removal of debris helps to prevent plugging of any equipment further off. So there are two channels which contain motorized automatic climber type bar screens. And presently the bar screens are larger in size. And therefore a lot of these rags are actually passing through the bar screens and moving on to the next chamber, which is the grit chamber. And therefore, a lot of grit washing, and then compaction takes place, and a lot of rags which come and disrupt the process. And therefore, since the bar screens are also pretty old, this mechanical equipment has been there for more than 30 years, it was felt that best is to go for the newer technology, and at the same time also go for a narrower screen by which we could trap more debris, rags, and stuff like that. And therefore, it is proposed to replica the bar screens with such type of screens, which will enable better processes at the grit washer and further processes. So proposals were received from two manufacturers, Duperon and Misco Water. Now, Misco Water is the same type of bar screen which is present right now, which is actually manufactured as Schloss, but we wanted to replace it with the same thing, but then we found that that is not only expensive, but it has the same type of technology, while Duperon has the state-of-art technology and works out to be even less priced than the Schloss type of existing bar screen. We checked the references for Duperon, and Duperon is being used in a couple of neighborhood plants in South San Francisco and other places. We checked with the authorities, and they were very happy with that bar screen, and therefore we brought it to the board for approval. Any questions? Staff is here to answer, please.
So I have a quick question. So, so the new equipment will prevent rags from going further into the system and entangling things, but rags will still be coming in. The fact that rags are coming in and can't get into the system, is that going to cause some sort of backup, earlier, in the process of transmitting things to the plant? Is it going to cause any other blockages just further upstream?
No, we haven't had that experience at all. We've seen that although it gets collected there, the bar screen, it can be mechanically removed. You have a mechanical bar screen also, a manual bar screen also, and that can remove stuff as soon as you notice it. And in case it stops working, then we get a signal, and we can always go and manually intervene and remove those rags.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions? I see no raised hands.
I will comment that after 30 years, I'm glad we're updating the technology. I'm sure it will make the plant more efficient.
I agree.
Yep, it's a good deal. Could I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Dye?
Aye.
Director Lohman?
Yes.
Director Clark?
Aye.
Director Penrose?
Aye.
Director Slater-Carter?
Yes.
Chair Ruddock?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item E is request to ratify, Yes. Request to ratify issuance of an emergency purchase order to CalCom for purchase of temporary cable material in the amount of $57,789.50.
Yes, on the 28th of April, we had a small glitch in the PG&E power. We lost power at 4 a.m. in the morning. And when the power came back at 8:30, when the PG&E crew came back into the plant and put the fuses, the bus duct blew as soon as the PG&E power was reinstated. And this caused the entire loss of power to the plant. So in order to keep the plant functioning, immediately we got hold of a temporary rental generator because we need a backup of the existing generator, and staff was required to do a 24/7 night shifts around the clock because it has to be manned as long as it is running on generator. So parallelly, what we did was, in order to get this thing going quickly, to prevent all these generator running as well as staff overtime, the best way would be to install a temporary connection of a temporary PG&E connection, and therefore we went ahead and looked for temporary cables, which was available, but it was available at Dallas, and we had to get it quickly to install it. And this was costing around $57,000, which was beyond the general manager's approving authority. And therefore, this was treated as an emergency, and all the board directors were informed at that point of time. And therefore, we're bringing it back to ratify this issuance of purchase order. Presently, as we speak, it is back on temporary power. PG&E power is back. We received the cables on last Wednesday, and these cables have been connected. We're getting the PG&E power, and the rental generator has been returned back to the issuing company, and staff is no longer required to do any overtime. And concurrently, we are also working with Eaton. Eaton has come and taken the measurements and found out which are the bus ducts which need to be replaced. We are waiting for a quotation from Eaton, because Eaton has to reach out to their subcontractor to install this. They're putting all that together. The subcontractor was at our plant on Friday. We haven't got the cost for replacing the bus duct, but that's going on concurrently. So you see the pictures which are in the staff report shows the bus duct which is shorted out, and that is pretty close to the PG&E transformer. Yes, staff is here to answer any questions.
I have one. So do we have insurance that might cover some of this cost?
I have reached out to insurance and filed the claim, and the claim has, the form has been accepted, and they are investigating.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I see that Matthew has his hand raised. Matthew?
I didn't catch what the actual cause of this outage was. What was it?
The actual cause of the bus duct shorting is yet to be determined. It'll probably be determined once Eaton comes back and opens the bus duct. They haven't done it. They're going to do that at the time of install of the new bus duct. And it'll be a portion of the bus duct.
That's the second one, isn't it?
What does it mean by second one? You mean the second time that this happened?
This is the second outage. The first one where the temporary cables were ordered for that one specifically. What was the cause of that outage? You said fuses, I think?
No, at this event, only once the temporary cables have been installed. If you're talking of a couple of years back, then yes.
No, I'm talking about April.
Oh, you're talking of April. Then what happened was at 4 o'clock, we just lost power. PG&E fuse, the fuses keep blowing off and on, sometimes due to wind or whatever. We called PG&E crew, and this is not the first time it has happened. But this time the fuses blew off, so we called PG&E, and PG&E came 4 hours later. And when they fixed the fuse, the bus duct shorted.
Are those PG&E fuses or Sam's fuses?
PG&E's fuses. They come, they climb up the pole and replace those fuses.
Well, I would think that their insurance might get involved here then.
Yeah, but there's a good chance that in the first instance, when we lost power at 4 o'clock, it could have been a minor short in the bus duct. And once they put the fuses back in place, that's when the major short took place.
Well, I think Matthew raises a good point, though. I mean, insurance should be looking at this. We need to investigate the cause, but it may be that, PG&E needs to, come to the table too. So let's not rule that out.
Okay.
Anything else, Matthew? Okay. Director
No,
Dunn.
thank you.
You're muted, Barbara.
Yeah, this muting. I know you replaced the bus duct like before you were the general manager, Kishan, and my recollection is that it was about $400,000. Am I correct in that?
No, Director Dye, you're not correct. It costed much more than $400,000. It costed close to $1 million. But that was replacement of the entire bus duct, because the bus duct design at that point of time, what was existing was an old design which was installed in the 90s. So Eaton had stopped manufacturing the old design, and therefore one had to replace the entire bus duct, starting from the PG&E transformer all the way to the switchgear inside. And that was many lengths of the bus duct, and that costed $1 million, close to $1 million. But in this case, it's only a small portion, which would be one straight portion, probably two straight portions and one elbow bend, which they would have to replace. It's not the entire bus duct. So we are estimating that it'll be far less than what we spent last time.
Do you have an estimate of more or less what it would be? That's good to hear. I mean, I just remember that previous to you, that it hadn't been maintained, and when they opened it up, it was full of water. I kind of remember, but now I'm sure we're maintaining things better now. What do you think you're looking at for the cost?
It's tough to answer your question. I have no idea because Eaton is working on those numbers. Probably the moment I get it, I'll be able to communicate it because I have no
We're
idea.
talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
Phew. One thing after another. But I'm glad to know that the staff was there and able to manage this and keep it from being worse. And when do you think the whole repair things will be back functioning the way they should be?
My guess is it'll take a couple of months, maybe 2 months to 3 months. But another important point to note is when the bus duct shorted out, the sparks actually went almost 20 feet away from the bus duct. So I'm glad that staff was not present there. The safety of the staff, you can imagine, the staff were so close to the PG&E pole and they were a little away from the bus duct because everybody was concentrating close to the PG&E pole when he was putting the fuses, while the bus duct was a little away from there. So I'm glad that everybody was away from the bus duct. Otherwise, the sparks flew almost 20 feet away. You can still see the sparks which are on the equipment.
Well, thank goodness for that. And thank you to all the staff that worked so many extra hours and overnight to keep an eye on it.
Director Slater-Carter.
Thank you. I would like for us, as part of the infrastructure cost of this project, to bring in an independent engineer to look, if we're going to be fighting with PG&E, they have really hotshot engineers. And if we're going to be arguing with PG&E, I want to have somebody who can determine exactly what is the problem. One of my concerns right now, and it might, and I don't think it should be anybody who's already working for us. I think it should be independent, but is that we've got, and I don't know, but it seems like we've got this sort of blend of old system and new system, and maybe they're causing problems one for the other. And I know we've been talking about updating the system. I really would like to know what we can anticipate in terms of, number one, whether we can get PG&E to share the cost or cover the cost. And number two, if it is partly old system mixed with new system and we've got a real mishmash, then we need to know what we need to get fixed as soon as possible. I'm looking at these numbers now and going, it looks like we might be going to need a mid-year adjustment because none of these costs were anticipated. But they all have to get paid. And so we need to be discussing now where that money's coming from and what's going to be postponed, what can't be postponed. All of that stuff. Again, I bought a piece of wood the other day at Ocean Shore. It was 12 inches wide and 6 feet tall, and it was $36. The costs of things are obscene right now, and so I don't think they're ever going to go down. And I trust staff on doing the prioritization, but this seems like it was a rude shock for all of us, and we need to figure out where we're going pretty quick. So like I say, start with an independent evaluation on this particular problem and then go over looking at the budget for the rest of the year.
I think we probably want to wait to see what the insurance investigator, what conclusion they draw. I mean, they should, I'm guessing they'll be pretty thorough looking at it. So I'd like to, before we hire an outside, engineer, I'd like to see what the insurance people say first. And Eaton is still looking at it too, right? Right, Kishan?
Yes, Eaton is looking at it, and Eaton, as well as our electrical subcontractors' preliminary findings do not indicate that there could be any connection with the PG&E fuses. So, but still, we are not ruling out the fact. We will check into that more in detail. And as far as the mid-year budget adjustment is concerned, we've already discussed it with the member agency managers in our managers meeting. And yes, we will go ahead with that once we get all the costs. We'll see what best we can do to get it before this financial year ending.
So, I think your point is well taken, Catherine. I just don't want to jump into it until we ought to get a first order investigation before spending further resources on it, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I agree. I just want to make sure if we're not comfortable with that we make sure it's an independent one so we're not compromising ourselves.
Yes, a forensic engineer.
Yes.
A forensic wastewater treatment engineer.
So all kinds of skills out there.
Kishan, do you have anything else on this item?
No, I'm fine, thank you, but I need a motion for approval and a second, please.
I don't see any hands raised on the public list, so.
Move to approve per staff.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Director Dye,
Aye.
Director Lohman,
Yes.
Director Clark,
Aye.
Director Penrose,
Aye.
Director Slater Carter,
Yes.
Chair Ruddock. You're muted, Chair.
Thanks to staff for all their work on the emergency.
Chair Ruddock, we didn't get your vote.
You didn't get your vote.
Sorry, yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, item F is discussion of general budget issues that were discussed at the GCSD meeting on April 21st. Kishan?
Yes. Yeah, there are a couple of issues which are brought up at the GCSD meeting on April 21st, 2022. And therefore, we put together items and those have been indicated in the staff report, but I'd like to make a short presentation and elaborate a little more on that. You able to see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So the purpose of this presentation is to convey the important message that SAM's financial record keeping is very much in place. And this is a part of an extensive discussion which happened at a recent member agencies board meeting. However, based on the publicly available records, that discussion included misunderstandings of SAM's record-keeping practice. So the purpose of this presentation, again, is to clarify the misconceptions brought up during the above-mentioned meeting, explain the financial operation rules and practices that SAM abides by. Now, before we begin, it is not SAM's intent to single out any individuals. And because these statements, which are presented in the forthcoming slides, were presented in a public forum at their meeting. Therefore, it is appropriate for SAM management to respond in a public forum as well, to clarify to the public so that they don't take home whatever message, what they got from the earlier meeting. In order to protect people's privacy, all statements are anonymous. We are not mentioning who said what, but these statements, what are being mentioned, have been taken from the public meeting that I've already mentioned. If I may request, please keep your questions until the end of this presentation. I can always pull up any slide you want, make notes, whatever questions, concerns you have. I can bring back any slide you want. So we had this first statement where it said that that's what is so difficult to explain this damn budget, that they move pieces around. And it's tough to get an apples to apples to apples comparison for years. And that's why I took the time to back out some of the numbers to try and make it even comparison. Now, SAM follows an extensive budget process, which includes several public meetings with member agency managers, SAM's finance committee, and the SAM board of directors. The recent budget, which you approved a few items before this agenda item, we started this process way back in January. So we went through several iterations, discussed it with member agency managers more than once, discussed it in finance committee, and then brought it to the SAM board of directors. So if there's any difficulty in understanding SAM's budget, whether in whole or specific line items, SAM management provides ample opportunity for these questions to be posed, not only at the above mentioned appropriate forums, emails, telephone calls, whatever. SAM staff and financial consultants are always ready and willing to clarify any questions. Our goal, as we have stated, is to provide our member agencies and the public with transparency in our finance operations. We had a statement which was said at the last meeting. All of a sudden, they're talking about that electrical system improvement thing, which is $1.5 million, which has never shown up on another CIP budget. So we need more consistency from them in that regard. And we're going to be talking about that in future managers meeting. The electrical system improvement project has been on the list of CIP since 2018, but it was postponed to a later date for various reasons. There was this procurement of a new electrical switchgear, which was a part of the electrical system, which we are talking of right now. A lot of factors impact whether a project will be implemented or not in a given fiscal year, such as field conditions, availability of contractors, conflict with other projects, how complex the project is, whether we need to move the electrical system to a different location, whether we raise the particular switchgear. So many other things are coming into place. SAM always keeps a consistent approach in CIP planning, but it is inevitable that some projects might get delayed or canceled. So there was a statement where it was made that, so I look at the infrastructure spending for the past 3 years, and that's supposedly the CIP. It's 68,000 for 1 year, 114,000 for 2020, 149,000 for 2021. They're collecting $2 million from us for capital improvement programs. So I don't know if they're taking some of the money they're spending on projects and putting it into the treatment budget or what they're doing. That's absolutely right. SAM adheres to the general accepted accounting principles, known as GAAP, and is subject to annual independent financial statement audits. The audited financial statements are available for public inspection on the SAM website and date back as far back as financial year 1996. The details of capital asset activity are displayed in the footnote 6 of every financial statement audit report from SAM. And to elaborate a little more further on footnote 6, this is what it is. Infrastructure revenue and expenditure is clearly mentioned for every year. I have consolidated financial year 2019, 20, and 21. In 19, we had more revenue compared to expenditure. So it was underspending. In financial year 2020, we had more revenue than expenditure. Again, we had underspending. In year 2021, we had expenditure more than revenue. So we had overspending. So to sum it up, the total revenue of 6.4, if you look back 3 years, 19, 20, and 21, we had an expenditure of only 5.1 million. That leaves about 1.2 million balance. So last year, SAM officially presented options of returning the 1.2 million balance or collecting less assessment for the financial year 2022. All member agency managers, as well as the SAM board, were not in favor of either option and decided that these funds should be retained by SAM for use in the case of emergencies. Another statement was, what happens is they end up with more than $1 million sitting in the bank, that is not a part of the required reserve. And that, I think, happened several years in a row. And it was that money that they used to deal with BOD problem because they've got this extra money that they don't have to account for. Now, as mentioned previously, SAM's board and finance committee approved SAM to retain the unspent revenue for potential unbudgeted emergencies. The BOD problem and plant upset last year was one of such emergencies, and SAM used this budget according to what was approved for. SAM tracked the costs of the plant upset, has been reporting budget versus actual on a quarterly basis since the last quarter of financial year 2021. These reports were again reviewed, accepted, and approved by the finance committee, and thereafter approved by the SAM board. A statement was made which said, but the other thing they're doing now, and if you look at the infrastructure document in our current budget, they're now not showing infrastructure spending since it's all capitalized. It's like gone away. As per the capital asset depreciation policy of SAM's financial policy, all expenditures of $5,000 and above are to be capitalized and converted into a long-term asset. A small portion of the SAM's financial policy has been attached in the staff report that is in your packet. Now, this financial procedure is performed by SAM accounting personnel along with assistance of accounting professionals. The determinations made by SAM is then assessed. The SAM staff is then assessed, audited by SAM's independent auditors, who have the ability to propose adjustments if the process did not follow SAM's policy or ran contrary to GAAP principles. And this process is conducted at the end of every fiscal year and is not a recent change in our procedure. That is the way SAM staff works so closely with the accounting professionals as well as with the independent auditors. A statement was made where SAM is collecting money for a certain purpose and not using it for that purpose. And though they owe us an accounting of that, and the other is when they make their case for. SAM's operating expenses include 4 subcategories: administration, treatment, environmental, infrastructure. It is customary for public agencies to reallocate funds as necessary amongst these subcategories. As long as infrastructure is a part of the operating expenses, it will continue to be a challenge to separate out in greater detail. The best alternative to track infrastructure separately is to create an entirely separate infrastructure budget. However, the member agency managers discussed this alternative last year and did not okay it, neither did the board move forward with it last year. A statement was made where they said that if they came to the conclusion that they really did not need to do the projects they proposed for which they have collected money, that money should roll forward into their next project budget. But what I want them to explain why they proposed and made a case for something and then decided they really didn't need it after all 6 months later. SAM takes CIP improvements seriously, and we have a good track record of completing them. And the details of this is already in your packet, but just to sum it up, in 17-18, we had 2 budgeted projects, we completed 2. In 18-19, we have 5 budgeted projects, we completed 3. 1 is in progress, and 1 got postponed. 19-20, we had 9 budgeted projects, 2 completed, 3 in progress, 3 canceled, and 1 postponed. In 2021, 10 budgeted projects, 7 completed, 1 in progress, and 2 canceled. When I say completed, it doesn't mean that it was completed in that particular year, but those projects which are marked in that particular budget year got completed later on. Now, this statement touches on some important aspects. I'm sure you have these questions at the back of your mind. What happens if a project is canceled or delayed? Why are some projects canceled? I'm going to answer you those questions. What happens if a project is canceled or delayed? Planned projects do not always get executed within the budget year for various reasons. SAM's CIP planning procedures are detailed. They were detailed in the CIP workshop, which was held in January 2021. For example, the wet weather storage phase 2. This was approved for implementation in 2017 with a budget of only $700,000. But SAM was unable to execute it within the same year due to various reasons, including high bid prices. So it got pushed and pushed. This project was eventually completed in 2021 at a final cost of $1.9 million. So there's a difference of 1.2 million. So where did Sam get the money from 1.2 million? Well, Sam did not request a budget adjustment because funds were available in the general fund, because the project funds for that particular budget got carried forward. Now, why are some projects canceled? A planned CIP projects can be canceled for various reasons. Sam's staff can come up with an innovative and cost-effective solution to the problem, so the project can get canceled totally. Or detailed engineering assessments determine that the asset is still in a good condition. For example, the Montara force main and the Princeton force main were actually budgeted. I think only the Montara force main was budgeted. And that was budgeted for partial replacement at about 1.3 million in 1920, because the entire force main, which is in several segments, costs almost $7 million. So we had spaced it out in several years starting from 1920. But upon conducting a comprehensive condition assessment of the pipeline, the entire force main was determined to be in good shape and did not require full replacement at all. So the funds budgeted for this project were rolled over to the next year for future projects. There was a statement which said, I don't think Sam should have a slush fund like that because the board was not informed. Now, Sam does not have a slush fund or anything of that nature. Sam's budget, expenditure, overspent amounts have always been reviewed and approved by the board of directors and finance committee, and subsequently independently audited. Our audits have received unmodified opinions and have not included notes of unnecessary, unrestricted funds. So there's no such thing as slush funds. There are other mentions made that the whole place is, Sam treatment plant is falling apart. Sam and his organization is so goofed up that we can't guarantee you that you're going to have money to run the plant next year at all. These are the statements made. Now, net position is the equivalent of equity. A positive figure represents overall good financial health. For example, those who are not familiar with net position, in layman terms, if cash or an asset is about $100,000, and accounts payable or liability is about $80,000, then the total net position is $20,000. Now, Sam's net position since 2016 has fluctuated. In 16 and 17, it was negative. And in 18, 19, 20, and 21, it has been positive. And these are all net position declared in the financial statement in the audit reports done by an independent audit firm, which was accepted by the finance committee and thereafter by Sam board. So all along, Sam has got its net position as positive for the past 4 years at least. So I'd like to conclude my presentation by saying Sam has been adhering to strict financial practices as directed by Sam's financial policy manual, as well as generally accepted accounting principles. Sam's board of directors and the finance committee review and approve all Sam's budgets and expenditures. There are no mysterious slush funds. The Sam board and finance committee are made aware of all expenditures, and we are very, very transparent. Sam welcomes and encourages more public participation in finance committee meetings, which are held on third Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Pacific time. And these agendas are posted well in advance and is available on the SAM website. Sam will soon be conducting workshops on financial operations in order to further our internal goals of financial transparency and service to our community so that there are no misconceptions. And we would have an independent auditing firm, independent financial firm who would be walking us through the workshop. That's all I have now, and staff is here to answer any questions. I stopped sharing, and I can always go back to any slide anybody needs any clarification. Thank you very much.
I don't see any hands raised at this time. Anybody would like to comment or ask a question? I see no hands raised by members of the public, and I see no hands raised by any directors. Director Slater Carter.
You're muted.
Red line's gone. I want to thank Keishan and the staff for going through and taking a very transposing what was said at the GCSD meeting. I know it's difficult during a meeting. Sometimes things get said that aren't quite as clear as we would want. And so I appreciate Sam's staff going through so that folks who watch the GCSD meeting in the future can watch this and realize that Sam and GCSD are working together, and that sometimes words are used in different ways in different conversations, and it's important for Sam to keep its financial reputation very clean and crisp with the public. So thank you, Keishan and George and Susie, for all of this hard work. And I've forgotten the new guy's name, but I look forward to getting these well, I think these are sorted out, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, and there, you know, I know that there's still this, we discussed it in the first item, having to do with the budget versus actual. Ideally, you know, if we could separate out capital budgets from operating budgets, things would be clear. But I don't think there's unanimous support for that approach. But, you know, I think there are options, like if we created a capital sinking fund where monies for infrastructure could go as they're received, and you could track it, you know, more clearly, track expenditures and you know, revenues in such an account. And it would be, you know, a separate account and very clear that the money in there is for infrastructure. You know, that's one way to do it. Another way is a, you know, capital reserve account. So, you know, I think there are ways to segregate the funds, which could be a discussion at a future finance committee meeting. But, you know, if there were some practice such as that might make things clearer, you know, I'd be willing to, you know, consider it. So, Catherine, if you're done, could you lower your hand?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Director Dye has her hand raised. Director Dye?
I'd just like to say that these comments at the meeting came from various people, and that there are some legitimate issues, not all of which have been addressed in this presentation. This is a very long presentation. We were not permitted to ask questions as we went along. I would like to reserve the right. I don't really want to respond to it because I feel as if it's ridiculous to, I'm sorry, that was a wrong word to use. Anyway, there are valid things that it would be nice to get cleared up. And I don't really, the only people who watch GCSD meetings at the end of the meeting, there's very few. This has been put more of a spotlight on some of the issues that have been raised than would have been just ignoring it or discussing it specifically with the people involved. And I'm going to take a look at this. I did not have a chance to review it before this meeting, and perhaps we'll have a direct and more appropriate conversation with the people involved. Thank you.
I think that would be highly recommended, is for yourself or somebody from your staff and your staff to just talk to Kishan, you know, directly, or bring, you know, additional questions to a finance committee meeting.
And I'm hardly silent.
Sorry?
I'm hardly silent about the issues and questions that I have. So I would hope that we could continue to resolve those questions without this kind of, anyway, doesn't matter. Done for tonight. Thank you.
Kishan?
Yes, that's what we'd like to encourage. We'd like agencies, the managers or staff or directors to reach out to us and ask questions. We are available anytime. You can walk into Sam's office. You will have our finance officer or I'll be around, and we can clear a lot of things by on a one-on-one basis rather than going back with some various conclusions. Thank you.
And I just want to add that, so I took a close look at the staff report from the last meeting where staff broke out project status into a flow chart. I don't think you can see that. I took a look at it. It was very helpful to me. So on issues of how the money's going in and, being spent on infrastructure, this is a good chart. I would add sort of a time overlay, quarters. I think that showing the bars, how much money's been spent is great, but I would sort of overlay time so that we can see if the money was spent in Q1 or Q2 or Q3. But I agree with Director Dye that, we still have work to do on bringing transparency to the infrastructure budget. But let's work with each other and engage and try to work these out in the various committees. We have operations committee, we have finance committee, and we have 2 regular board meetings a month. We should be able to crack this. So thank you, Kishan. So we're moving on to general manager's report. I'm guessing that's the second meeting of this month.
Yes, but I have a small item to address, if I may. Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we reported a small leak at the Montara Force Main this morning, and that was the location is right opposite the airport in an open farm there. It's close to the driveway to the farm, and I believe it's category 3, and there was a spill of about 50 gallons, and it was contained. It didn't go anywhere, either to the creek or the beach. There was no impact to either of them, and staff has been working on it. And as we speak, just probably half an hour back, the entire thing has been fixed. We've been able to remove a small portion of the pipe, which was about 4 feet, and just tested it. We had shut down the flow coming in from the north, from Montara, and held the flow at the Walker tank while we carried out all this process. And we've been at it since morning, and Tim and his crew, the staff, everybody were there till about 8 o'clock, I believe. Just half an hour back, they finished it. And it's all contained, it's working well. Yes, Director Dye, you have a question? You're muted.
It was the IPS itself that was leaking?
Yes, Force Main.
And why? Were you able to ascertain why? I mean, we had the assessment that said that the Montara IPS is in really good shape.
Correct. Yeah, we are still trying to find out. See, the assessment is for the complete pipe, which is 14,000 feet. And this leak is at 3 feet. It's just possibly the entire pipe which was cut was about 4 feet. So this is yet to be determined, but the leak is from the bottom of the pipe, and we don't know what it could be. Could possibly be, well, I wouldn't say that. We've got a portion of the pipe we are analyzing and trying to find out what could have gone wrong.
Thank you for that. Attorney's report.
Yes, good evening, board members. This case, when you're dealing with joint powers authorities, the rules are always a little bit different. But since this is a case that when I was at the Association of California Water Agencies, I'm on the Legal Affairs Committee, and a lot of those cases come through, and various members are concerned about it, and we all kind of, listen politely. But a lot of the time, it's not a big deal. This is one that kind of made everybody sit up and say, "Whoa!" Right? And so I wanted to let you know, for your member agencies, it's probably a bigger deal on the water side, but I think it affects wastewater agencies too. And it's kind of like the next generation of Prop 218 litigation. It's an $80 million judgment against the city of San Diego for alleged exceedances of Prop 218. and it dealt with tiered rates. And so, no, again, it's a little bit different for wastewater agencies, but to the extent that every single customer is not being charged the same thing, the exact same rate, there is significant risk that this case seems to suggest could be a problem going forward. Looking at peaking as a methodology for assigning higher costs to certain kinds of ratepayers, looking at different blends of water, really hyper scrutinized by the trial court in a way that the city of San Diego, since it was done as a class action, tremendous liability. So they're appealing, and they actually came before the Association of California Water Agencies for support in their efforts to appeal the court's decision. But anyway, it's just a reminder that Prop 218 and to a lesser extent Prop 26, which deals with fees as opposed to specific rates, it's still out there. It's not weakening, and so it's one of those decisions that we'll certainly have to watch as it goes to the courts. One other thing, and that is just one other thing I learned up at Aqua. Lots of good information. Looks like there's a significant budget surplus this year. There'll be proposed. They're estimating a smaller one next year, and then after that, deficits. So, to the extent that there's opportunities from the state, now is probably the time. It's estimated, I understand, to be like $65 billion this year. Now, a lot of it's already spoken for. But to the extent, there is the budget trailer bill, there could be opportunities. And so that may be something to coordinate with CAS on as to so there could be opportunities still, if not this fiscal year, then in next year's fiscal year budget.
Yeah, I'll just add to that the revised budget will be presented tomorrow. Probably, usually it's at 10 o'clock. The governor's office will present the May revised. And then subsequent to that, the Assembly and Senate will be racing with their own implementation bills. And the negotiations will continue, and a budget will need to be adopted by June 15th. So there's going to be a lot of action on the budget, a lot of horse trading starting tomorrow.
Yeah, that's all I have to report.
Thank you. So, director's reports, anybody? Okay, topics for future board consideration. Do we have closed session items?
I don't have an Easter one. I'll defer to Kishan to see if he does.
No, I don't have either.
Okay, folks, this meeting is adjourned.
Okay.
Good night, everyone.
Thank
I
you.
apologize.